Tonight on The Wrap, an outrageous lack of judgment. Kemi Badenoch condemned for appointing a convicted neo-Nazi as an advisor on radicalisation. Joshua Bonehill-Paine has withdrawn his candidacy to be a Tory councillor following anger in the Jewish community. But Kemi Badenoch says he will now work with the party's commission on culture and integration. Also tonight, a president's plea as 21 people are killed in airstrikes across Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky says access to American air defense missiles would have saved lives.
Do you still think the president is an idiot, a racist and a misogynist? Sir, do you still hold a dim view of the president?
We're looking forward to our meeting.
Words come back to haunt Ed Miliband as he makes his first trip to Washington as Foreign Secretary. And yet more damaging claims against Gianni Infantino. Sky News learns FIFA sent out pre-drafted letters for football associations to use to endorse his re-election. Well, we discuss the day's biggest stories with the former Defence Secretary, Dame Penny Mordaunt, and the political commentator, Adam Boulton. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers coming up in about half an hour's time. Well, hello there. Good evening. Penny and Adam, welcome to both of you as well. So, Kemi Badenoch doubling down today on her support for a convicted anti-Semite. The Conservative leader has appointed a former neo-Nazi as an advisor on radicalisation. Joshua Bonehill-Paine had been selected to contest a council election for the Tories, a decision which had prompted anger and concern in the Jewish community. And the backlash led him today to withdraw his candidacy. Well, Adam and Penny, questions now of judgment, do you believe, for Kemi Badenoch?
And I think that we have ended up in the right place on this today, and I was quite struck by his own statement. I mean, I think he is a genuine person trying to make amends for things that he's done in the past. But as he said, he recognises he's got more to do. So he's still got an opportunity to prove that. But I think she's a person of conviction, Kemi, and she believes in rehabilitation. And I think she was right not to throw him under the bus.
Adam?
I think it was a bad day of Kemi Badenoch, first of all, because she misjudged the strength of feeling in our council culture about candidates. Secondly, because she did a sort of drive-by insult to every councillor in this country, basically saying they don't really matter. And thirdly, because she has really deprived the Conservative Party of the weapon of ever questioning candidates selected by other parties. So not a good day.
OK, well, plenty to pick apart on this, but what about the detail of it? Mr Bonehill-Paine had been jailed back in 2016 for the racially aggravated harassment of the former Labour MP Luciana Berger. Well, tonight she has described his appointment as an insult. Nonetheless, Kemi Badenoch continues to give him her backing, saying this evening: while I'm sad that Joshua feels he won't be given the space to explain his position and represent his community, I'm glad he's going to work with me and the party on tackling radicalisation as part of our Culture and Integration Commission. If we're going to stop extremism and anti-Semitism, we're going to need help from those people who were part of the problem but have now changed and are being part of the solution. Piling on them and trying to get them cancelled may be sport for other parties, but this is a different Conservative party. Well, let's bring in Lucy McDade, who's here to join us then. Very interesting on this, and there is plenty to pick apart. But why has Kemi Badenoch chosen this hill to die on?
Well, I don't know, but today it was one of those stories that was unravelling, and I don't know whether you all thought this, but there is always a sense of inevitability that this kind of climb down is then going to happen. So it came earlier this evening. Joshua Bonehill-Paine, should we have a look at what he said on social media? He said, "I'd thought that getting involved in my local council and working hard for my community was a good way to show how much I've changed and that I want to give something back. I realise now that the fight against anti-Semitism is something I actually need to do more of. I need to show the Jewish community how much I regret my previous actions and how hard I'll work to help to fight, to destroy anti-Semitism and rebuild trust. Now, this wasn't welcomed by Luciana Berger, who originally criticised the decision for him to be selected as a council candidate, but then she also went on to say that the decision to welcome this individual as an advisor to the Leader of the Opposition is no better than allowing him to stand as a council candidate. It's a privileged and influential national role. As a victim of this man's heinous crimes, this appointment is an insult. There are a number of things here to go at, I suppose. One thing kind of pointing out, Kemi Badenoch and Penny, I think you were mentioning this when you said that she's a conviction politician. One thing that people behind the scenes of the Conservative Party say is that Kemi Badenoch is doing well in the polls as a party leader, partly because if people don't agree with their politicians, they seem with her views, they seem to like the fact that she sticks by what she says. She's certainly sticking by her support for Joshua Bonehill-Paine here. But I should point out when it came to Louise Haigh, for example, and yeah, OK, Louise Haigh was in Cabinet and she was convicted of fraud. Kemi said in 2024, this country needs conviction politicians, not politicians with convictions. So is there some kind of criticising here saying there's a bit of a double standard?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. So is the point that Adam made, that other parties have been criticised for their candidate choices, and now, that is going to be difficult for the Conservatives to knock at that door, certainly. But as far as you're concerned, you say it's been effectively the right result for Kemi Badenoch, bringing this man back into the fold, but not via a candidacy. Is it because she does believe in rehabilitation, that genuinely she does not like cancel culture and doesn't believe people should be cancelled? So what are the upsides for her in this, do you think? Or is it the information that he brings from his knowledge of having been an anti-Semite?
Yes, I mean, he's clearly somebody who wants to contribute and to try and improve the situation in this particular regard. He has been doing that for quite a while, and has been making a difference. And I think that she recognises that, and she also, having heard her speak on this today, genuinely believes that people who genuinely show contrition for the actions they have done and want to make amends for it should be afforded an opportunity to do that. Clearly, being a councillor or another elected post, being selected as to get onto the approved list of candidates is one thing. But what he recognises in his statement is you need something else as well, which is you need trust with the general public. And I think his statement was actually very powerful this evening, in that it came across as being very humble and recognising that despite what he has already done, it is not enough. And I think that was the right thing for him to do.
Let's listen to Kemi Badenoch. Actually, she was speaking yesterday, so this is her defending his candidacy when she spoke yesterday.
Yes, he is somebody who had been previously convicted, but he is someone who has shown contrition for his crimes, has been rehabilitated, and is spending every day working to solve the very problem which he knew he had caused previously. He's going up and down the country training people, and the Conservative Party believes in second chances. This is not just someone that we've picked up who's a convicted criminal. This is somebody who is actively working to help communities, especially Jewish communities.
Yes, that was clearly before he decided to step down. Also on radio this morning, she said, I'm not giving him a national platform. He's standing to be a councillor in Somerset. It is a local platform looking at parking, putting out bins. That's what councillors do. It's not a national platform. Thereby upsetting councillors everywhere who actually run, millions and billions in budget.
Yes, and also don't forget, being a councillor is often seen as a route to becoming an MP, and that's a route to get to the top. So to belittle it in that way, I think was a mistake. I'm sure the statement that he makes is sincere, but what he's basically saying is I shouldn't have put myself forward in the first place. And Kemi Badenoch could, when asked about it, say, well, I'm sure on reflection he'll consider his position. She didn't say that. She actually supported his selection, which I think, was clearly, in this case, a miscalculation. I mean, I should say, I don't think this is a massive story. I mean, I think it's an August story. I don't think it'll go on forever. But, just think how many times we've heard Conservative politicians talking about the Corbyn era, the anti-Semitism at the core of the Labour Party, and how challenging successive leaders, or challenging Keir Starmer, to root it out, and he responded to that. And then they go ahead and accept as a candidate, not someone advising the party, but actually someone that they're saying to the voters, you should elect this person, they choose someone who is a convicted anti-Semite. I mean, it has to be an enormous mistake.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like an open goal in many respects. Lucy, what have other parties said about it, including Reform, which, you know, Mr Bonehill-Paine seems to suggest he's been, you know, shown an open door by Reform?
Yeah, so on the comment that Kemi Badenoch made about parking, sorting out bins, probably not surprising, Ed Davey weighed in on that part of the debate, saying that that was out of order. When it comes to Reform, Joshua Bonehill-Paine is posting screenshots online, effectively appearing to suggest that Reform had approached him to actually stand to be a candidate for Reform UK. Joshua Bonehill-Paine has also admitted that he actually applied to stand for the party. Reform effectively saying ultimately he wasn't selected to be a candidate. Whether or not he actually passed the vetting process, there's evidence online to suggest that he'd passed Reform's vetting process, and that's not the first time that process has come under scrutiny. But they are effectively saying he didn't get approved to be a candidate, so it's not really a problem.
There is another significant aspect about him in this, which is not talked about, that he runs something called the Crewkerne Gazette, which is quite a significant online presence, basically doing parody videos using AI. I mean, he did one over the weekend parodying Reform UK's Dad's Army marching off the cliffs of Dover. So I think he is a significant figure at the time when all parties are trying to, you know, fight the political battle online as well as anywhere else. And I just wonder if that's one of the reasons why, you know, there's been a little temptation to go soft on him.
And Penny, there must be dozens of former Conservative MPs who would like to be reselected to fight the next election. I don't know if you're one of them. You know, clearly, yeah, exactly. Clearly, Kemi Badenoch is putting barriers in the way on net zero, for example, and on what to do about European
barriers.
rules.
I think.
Well, I mean, they are, aren't they? To more moderate Conservatives.
I think what Kemi recognises is it's not good enough to have a stellar manifesto. You actually owe it to the people that vote for you to be in a position to deliver it. And part of what hampered the last years of the Conservative administrations, well, successive ones, was that they couldn't carry out what they were elected to do. I mean, you know, terrible rows during Brexit, for example, being the most memorable. So she's absolutely within her rights, and it's the sensible thing to say to people who want to stand with her, I expect you to do this when we get in. Part of the problem Keir Starmer had was he chose to have, you know, a very light manifesto with nothing in it about welfare reform. And surprisingly, when he tried to do some very modest welfare reforms with Rachel Reeves, his MPs said, well, we didn't stand on a manifesto that was going to do this. We don't want to do the
basically, it may be the right thing to do, but basically you're saying scrap the time-honoured Conservative principle of being a broad church.
Yeah.
No, I would say...
You are, right?
No,
if you're excluding former cabinet ministers like Grant Shapps.
I think if you're... well, again, I've just got the speculation to press as to... I've no inside scoop. But it's a sensible thing to do, to say, this is the manifesto we're going to stand on. This is what we think is required to sort out our borders and other issues. This is... If you are elected... as a Conservative MP, this is what we expect you to do.
I get
I think that's
you're
perfectly sensible.
streamlining the Conservative message, but effectively you're saying you cannot support net zero while watching Europe burn, but you can be a former neo-Nazi. I mean, that seems to be the choice on offer.
No, I think. Look, Kemi has set out that she believes in climate change. She believes. I mean, it's a core tenet of being Conservative that you're there to protect the environment, that matters to you. But what she has exposed is the fantasy of what was a raft of net zero policies, which were actually not going to get us to this target, and were also doing some severe damage to the country in the process. So she has given some sobriety to this issue, but she still cares about the environment. I think the Conservative Party is still a broad church. It's actually, out of every party, I think it's got the highest vote ceiling. It's the largest number of people that say they would be prepared to vote for the party. So I think it still is a broad church.
Yeah, that's how you cast the net.
But if we're going
becomes
to get in, we've got to deliver for the public what we say we're going to do. I don't think that's a controversial point.
Yeah, OK.
I do think on this, sorry, just to finish, it's an August story, like you were saying, Adam, but I think the thing that will follow Kemi Badenoch around next May, ahead of campaigning for those local elections, is a lot of local journalists, I think especially, because when I was one, I would have asked this question, is that why have you criticised councillors, insulting councillors, by saying that all they do is sort out parking and bins? I think that's the bit of this story that will follow her around.
Yeah, and I think that's you might be right, and I think that's unfortunate because that was in response to a particular question she was asked. I mean, you know, she's spoken many times before about all sorts of things that councillors do, particularly if you've got, you know, like social services brief and all those sorts of things. So I think if that does happen, that's unfair.
But is she actually saying, which she appeared to say this morning, there is a lower bar to being selected as a Conservative councillor than selected as a Conservative parliamentary candidate?
So we need to move on very quickly, yeah?
No, I was just going to say, it is clearly the process to go through to be an MP is a much more resource-intensive process for the party. And I think out of any political party, the Conservative Party has the most rigorous, as someone that has been through it again, the most rigorous process of any party.
Told you there was lots to unpick. We could carry on. No doubt we'll look at that when the papers come through as well. In the meantime, let's go to what was a devastating night in Ukraine overnight. Volodymyr Zelensky saying that lives could have been saved in Ukraine last night if the country had had American air defence missiles. 21 people were killed in a huge Russian attack, and Ukraine's leader is pleading with Western allies to help unlock a new supply of Patriot missiles. Here's our military analyst, Professor Michael Clark.
After Ukraine's recent success in targeting Russia with its drones, it wasn't hard to predict that the Russians would respond with ballistic missiles, and indeed they did. And last night there were a series of really big attacks on Kyiv and the surrounding areas. According to the Ukrainians, they attacked residential areas, a railway station, and a series of warehouses in a series of explosions that created some pretty big fires. That was all fairly predictable. And as a result of that, President Zelensky has said some very angry things today. He said ballistic missile interceptors could have saved the lives of those killed today. It is very important that our partners, that's the Europeans, our partners understand that delays in supplying them or an unwillingness to provide anti-ballistic systems lead directly to such horrific casualties and destruction. And he makes the point here that only a third of the interceptors exist now in Ukraine that they had this time last year. So in a sense, he is admitting that Ukraine is wide open, Kyiv in particular, is open to ballistic missile attack. Last night, they were subject to 115 Russian drones. They brought down about 90% of them, well over 90 of those drones. There were about 4 high-speed cruise missiles. They seem to have brought those down. But there were 24 ballistic missiles that followed them in, and all 24 landed. There was nothing that Kyiv can do about that, because they have run out of ammunition for their Patriot batteries. They've got lots of other interceptors. They've got interceptors, the NASAMS one, which is an American, Norwegian system. They've got German, Italian, French systems that work. They've got their old Soviet systems, the old S-300, the Buck M1. But the only thing that will bring down ballistic missiles fully and properly are Patriots.
Well, that is the plea. Certainly the number of Patriot missiles available has rapidly fallen. It means that, you know, cities like Kyiv are literally prey to ballistic missiles that are sent by Russia, which is promising, again, you know, another worst winter ever for Ukraine. And this is, you know, it's desperate to sit there and be pounded with no defences, or what feels like no defences.
Yes, and although Ukraine isn't always in the evening news, but it's been going on for a very long time. I mean, just a startling statistic that the daily global battle casualty rate is equal today as it was during the closing months of World War II. And a large chunk of that is this conflict. It's still an extremely hot war. And the Ukrainians desperately need more help on air defences. You know, we have given defensive support, and it would not be crossing a line to do more on this front. The Ukrainians are not going to fold on this, and if we want to help bring this conflict to an end, we need to keep support for them strong.
Adam?
Well, Zelensky said over the weekend that he believes that Ukrainian forces are killing or maiming 30,000 3,000 Russian troops a month, you know, which is an enormous rate of casualties. But there is a big issue now about air defences because, as on so many things, Donald Trump is blowing hot and cold. At the NATO summit in July, he suggested, or basically said that he was going to the surprise of many people, he said that he was actually going to allow the Ukrainians to to take the American patents and to build their own Patriot missiles. But since then, he's rowed back on that. Mm-hmm. And of course, the only way that the Ukrainians can get Patriot missiles is if we in Europe buy them off the Americans and pass them on.
Unless they are allowed to build Americans.
Unless they're allowed to build
which
their
was
own.
suggested.
But apparently they're not going to be allowed to do that now. That's the latest position of the administration. But the Americans, because partly of everything they're expending in the war on Iran, are worried about their own stocks of weapons. And Penny, you know, former Defence Secretary, would know all about that. So, you know, it's very tense. But I mean, another point worth making is there was a lot of fuss made at the weekend by the Russians about the drone which crashed on a beach and killed 7 civilians, perhaps because it was shot down by the Russians rather than because it was targeted. Well, you know, today the Russians killed 17 people in one strike, and that was targeted.
And there's a lesson for us all in this because I mean, we know that we have a lack of conventional forces. We have very weak air defences. It's one of the things that the last defence review said we need to do more with. So this should be a wake-up call for all NATO nations.
Well, July, you started talking about some of the figures, was the deadliest month for Ukrainian civilians since the first year of the war. Our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, was in Ukraine last month, documenting how the war is now being fought. Here is a brief taste of his special report.
Maybe 4 years into this war, but there's a real sense of urgency.
The real game changer is the real war for our nation.
Completely surrounded by anti-drone nets.
Above ground, it was very, very hectic, and I'll be honest, I stopped counting the explosions when they got into double figures.
Despite all the bombings, the explosions, the continuous alarms, the threat of danger, life obviously goes on.
Лачок. Мріємо, щоб все це скоріше закінчилося і наші дітки були в безпеці.
Yes, and if you would like to watch the whole film, then do scan the QR code, which is on your screen right now. Well worth a watch. Right, let's bring you some breaking news now concerning FIFA, shall we? And the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, has issued an apology over his botched attempt to sell off a stake in the World Cup to private investors. There's been a long meeting today in Rabat in Morocco and a long statement, which is an update, as they've called it, from the FIFA president and the FIFA secretary-general. So let's get more details and speak to our sports correspondent who's been following this very closely, Rob Harris. Right, what have they said and how far does this apology go, Rob?
Well, here it is, signed by Gianni Infantino, Mateusz Morawiecki. We've obtained the letter sent to members of the FIFA Council and the vice presidents with an apology over the botched attempts to sell stakes in the World Cup to private investors. But in it, there's also effectively a defiance by Gianni Infantino to fight on as FIFA president, fending off all the critics around the world, from Prime Minister Andy Burnham, tonight the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney calling for him to go as well, from the European FAs who are demanding change over this sell-off, and also in the statement backing from those within FIFA's own administration who had criticised the plan. It says that for the avoidance of doubt, this letter we've obtained, the FIFA Secretary-General and the Management Board in attendance at this emergency meeting today in Morocco reaffirm their support for the FIFA President Gianni Infantino as the only official elected by the 211 FIFA member associations. In turn, the FIFA President reiterates his full support to the FIFA Secretary-General and the FIFA administration for their necessary and outstanding work in the delivery of his vision. And now, the key part, perhaps we can see this now on screen, about the meeting today. we are fully confident that the outcome of today's meeting will strengthen FIFA's governance, help restore confidence in the organisation and enable us to prepare for the major events and challenges ahead in a united and transparent manner while continuing our mission to develop the game around the world. In this context, we acknowledge mistakes were made in the process of the proposed establishment of the FIFA Forward enterprise. It was certainly not the intention of the FIFA Council and FIFA member associations to feel excluded from the process, and it should have been handled differently. We acknowledge the errors were also made after the proposal was leaked to the media. So certainly contrition we don't often hear from within FIFA, from within Gianni Infantino's office as well. And will this be enough for those critics? European football's governing body, UEFA, wanting to see changes. Well, what this letter says is there are always lessons to be learned and we'll continue to improve our processes in light of this experience. It is important to stress that although mistakes were made, everything was done in full compliance with the FIFA regulatory framework. So this is trying to say, yes, it looked bad, but we did nothing wrong. Nothing against the rules, nothing wrong with the power abuses, as some might say within FIFA. The fact Gianni Infantino negotiated this $20 billion scheme to sell off $4.2 billion of shares in the new World Cup enterprise without consulting anyone, doing negotiations with Joshua Kushner, the brother of Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, raising concerns about those links to the Trump family. This is very much Gianni Infantino, Mateusz Grafström, who's his Secretary-General at FIFA, saying that nothing was done wrong, even though it looks bad, but they are going to examine changes. So we'll wait to see just what that means. We're going through this now. We are waiting for some official word from FIFA. We've obtained this letter that's gone out tonight to members of the FIFA Council and vice presidents. It's the first word from Gianni Infantino since the early hours of Saturday morning when Sky News revealed that he was abandoning this attempt to launch the new FIFA subsidiary, to oversee all the money-making parts, to oversee the competitions they run, the World Cups. We've been waiting since the early hours of Saturday morning until now on Wednesday night. They've been holed up in talks all day in FIFA's office in the Moroccan capital, Rabat. Senior staff summoned there for this meeting. Interestingly, it doesn't seem necessarily all the management necessarily did go to those talks. And tonight, in Rabat, we have seen Gianni Infantino. He's been attending, there we see, a Women's Africa Cup of Nations match alongside Mateusz Grafström, his Secretary-General, who just yesterday, Sky News obtained an email he'd sent to the FIFA staff talking about the plans being a sad and reproachable series of events which are difficult to comprehend and accept. But there you see the two of them putting on a united front, Gianni Infantino and his effective number two, the Secretary-General, Mateusz Grafström. And we'll wait to hear what the reaction is from across the world of football, from those football associations who did reject their letters of endorsement for Gianni Infantino for his re-election. They withdrew them from FIFA, and now we do have a FIFA statement. If you want to stay with me, that was the leaked letter. We now do have the FIFA letter, the FIFA statement, which says that following this meeting today, the FIFA Secretary-General, members of the FIFA Management Board and attendants reaffirmed their full support for Gianni Infantino. So very similar, as we're saying, from the letter that we obtained sent to the Council, and this is very much backing their leadership. And here's one thing that they do say in the letter to FIFA's council members and vice presidents, as well as in the media statement: FIFA will no longer tolerate any attacks on its integrity, good governance and due process, and will take all necessary measures to protect and safeguard its name and reputation. So if you've been criticising FIFA over the last week, you could be a football association who's criticised Gianni Infantino, UEFA, CONCACAF, the North American Confederation, the Asian Confederation, people on social media, FIFA tonight, both shown contrition for launching this attempted World Cup sell-off venture, but also at the same time launching a stinging attack, going on the fight back to the world, saying they'll not tolerate any attacks on its integrity, good governance and due process. So very much saying they are in the right.
Rob, fascinating stuff. Thank you very much indeed. And just going back to that letter from the FIFA president and the FIFA secretary-general, pictures of which we saw, as Rob said, attending a women's football game in Morocco after this meeting, they go on to point out that the proposal would have been subject to the approval of the FIFA member associations and the FIFA Council, pointing out it is now off the table. And then they go on to say, with the project withdrawn, FIFA will no longer tolerate any attacks on its integrity, good governance and due process, and will take all necessary measures, protect and safeguard its name and reputation. I just wonder who that's aimed at. Is it aimed at UEFA? Is it aimed at the English and Welsh FAs, which, you know, had or were going to withdraw their support for Gianni Infantino? Is it aimed at the journalists who published the story? I mean, it's
a desperate threat, isn't it? They don't want to be criticised anymore. And it has to be said, the basic statement from Infantino, it's untrue. I mean, it's absolutely clear that he had no intention of consulting the other members. He was presenting them with a take it or leave it vote, you know, within a matter of weeks of announcing it all. So, and, you know, the man in charge of the development of football, Arsene Wenger, says he knew nothing about it. So, you know, where was this consultation? It just wasn't there.
So are you surprised that, you know, FIFA seems to have come out in support of him where, you know, around the world, football associations have real questions?
Well, I think it's clearly been drafted by a team of lawyers, and it both, you know, it's focused on the legal detail as opposed to the real issue of substance, which is, do people trust this guy? I mean, that's the bottom line. You know, this is an international body that people really care about, and I think he's done a lot to break that trust and confidence. The letter might be, apart from, you know, what Adam just said, with regard to the rule book, it might be technically correct, but I don't think that's going to get him out of the situation he's created for himself.
I mean, it's important. This is a statement by FIFA, and a lot of people say, well, effectively, Gianni Infantino is FIFA, so it was a kind of double statement. This is not a statement by the member nations of FIFA, and we know what UEFA thinks, we know what Andy Burnham thinks, we know what Mark Carney thinks. I mean, you know, this is not going to push that back.
There's no humility in there, and I think that's what they would have been looking for.
Yeah. And people really care about the World Cup, which is the bottom line of this one, isn't it? Next up, we will be taking a first look at what is making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers.
jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Well, it's time now to see what is making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Let's start with the Metro, which leads on calls to scrap indefinite prison sentences after the government confirmed its plans for the early release of thousands of inmates. The Express also covers early releases, with the former Home Secretary, Dame Priti Patel, describing the plans as a betrayal for the family of PC Andrew Harper, two of whose killers would be eligible. Meanwhile, Andy Burnham has written an article for tomorrow's Mirror announcing that 150 new mental health centres will open across the country. The Financial Times reports on efforts by Chinese authorities to get the country's economy back on track by recouping billions in unpaid taxes. According to The Guardian, a prominent Cambridge professor has now resigned amid allegations of plagiarism and embellishment. The Daily Mail also leading on that story with the headline, "Plagiarism Professor Resigns as Cambridge Investigates." And on the front of the Star, Kent looks like something out of a Western movie as cattle are driven across land afflicted by the drought. More dramatic pictures of the lack of rain in parts of the UK. So let's kick off with some of the papers. Still waiting for some, it seems, does it not? Do you want to do the Metro first then, Adam, which continues the early release issues?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, this is, if you like, the counter-argument that there are 2,000 people who are in prison under these now ended orders, these so-called public protection, indefinite public protection sentences. And the example they give is of someone who was done for stealing a phone in 2005, and 20 years later he's still in prison. And this was introduced by the Blair government. Kenneth Clarke, who when he was Conservative Home Secretary, was very much opposed to the idea. He's said since that it's a scandal and these people should be released. And I have to say, I'm genuinely puzzled as to why there's still 2,000 people on these IPP, because this issue has been raised again and again and again.
So, I mean, is there no simple explanation, like people aren't looking at the cases or they've done something wrong in prison?
Well, the condition was that although they'd be given a sentence, they would be held until they were considered to be no longer a danger to the public. Yeah. And, you know, arguably, everyone in prison is potentially a danger to the public, but that's not normally the condition. But it was in the case of these sentences. I mean, you know, by every recognition, according to every lawyer I've ever spoken to and legal judges, it's a blot on the British justice system, yet nothing's been done about it.
I mean, it's extraordinary. It is legal, is what I was trying to say.
And in the context of we're discussing, you know, early release of extremely dangerous individuals, you know, it's an area that clearly ought to be reviewed. I mean, we've also got a lot of foreign nationals in our prisons at the moment, focusing on getting them deported. My party is very keen that that happens. There are clearly lots of things that can be done before you have to turn to, you know, considering early release for people who've done extremely abhorrent crime.
I think, I mean, you would understand this better than me. I think there's a technical problem that you would actually have to repeal the law, and you can't repeal a law retrospectively.
No, but there is always, if the political will is there, there is always, as a former leader of the House of Commons, there is always a way to do it. It might be difficult, but there will be a way to do it. And I just think, I mean, this is a particularly, you know, stark case of someone that's guilty of phone theft. And has been lingering in prison for a very long time.
Yes, you get the sense we'll hear more of the 2,000 cases as they unravel and people make their case. Penny, why don't you pick up on the Daily Mirror, which is Andy Burnham quite clearly proving he's working whilst on his holidays, which is more than 150 new centres are being set up for mental health, to help improve mental health.
Yes, I mean, look, I think that Andy Burnham is clearly running at the job. He's made lots of announcements. The question I have is how is this going to be funded? How is it going to be sustainable if he's not also doing the other half of the equation, which is the welfare reforms that everyone agrees are needed? You know, I just worry how sustainable these initiatives are going to be.
Yeah, I mean, he's said, as you say, that this is part one, that he's going to... The announcements we had about training last week and tech and on mental health basically are designed to get people into work and off benefits. But what he's doing at the moment is, if you like, all carrot. What we're not seeing is him actually saying, which for economic reasons many people think is necessary, actually saying, right, well, there is a category of people who are going to lose their benefits. Or indeed, we're going to change the benefit system so that work pays rather than that. And he's suggested that he might want to go in that direction, but he certainly, so far, has not shown the bottle to go for it.
And over the last couple of years, this has become a harder problem to solve, because in Labour's first budget that we know clobbered a lot of businesses with the national insurance contribution hike, also clobbered the third sector. And some of the best employment support, particularly for people with mental health or behavioural disabilities, people who were, you know, quite far away from the workplace, all that was destroyed because of the additional costs. I know in my former constituency, all of that support has now gone. So this is now much harder thanks to Labour's first budget, and so I think they're going to really struggle.
OK, fascinating stuff. Adam, a story I know you're very keen on, having met the person involved. This is a Cambridge professor who has resigned with some very strong statements about the pressure, the mental health pressure he's been under because of questions of whether or not he plagiarised some of his previous work. So explain the story for people who've not followed it. It's on the front of the Daily Mail and on the front of the Guardian.
Well, this is a sad story, really, because this man, Jason Arday, he's had comes from a working class background. He reportedly had big problems with autism when he was growing up. He learned to speak after, in various between 11 and 16, people suggest. He has gone through the academic system, and he was appointed as, I think, the youngest professor at Cambridge in sociology ever. And, I met him on a television programme, and he cuts a remarkable figure, if you like. He's very different from us in terms of who you expect to see in those sort of positions, and he's undoubtedly had a lot of support. Now, the problem has emerged that in his doctoral thesis, which, of course, is an essential step to becoming a professor, there are allegations of plagiarism that he was taking, without accreditation, bits of research from other people researching the same area, also people of minority backgrounds looking into minority discrimination. Some journalists have been looking into this. There is the story that the police were put onto a journalist who was asking questions, who was cause of racial harassment, but he's bringing out his autobiography where he appears to make some pretty exaggerated claims about his story, that he raised $5 million by doing 30 marathons in 35 days and all sorts of things. But on his academic record, and this, I think, is where he's really got into trouble, because the university, John Moores University in Liverpool, where he wrote his thesis, they said they looked into whether there's plagiarism and they gave him a clean bit of health. But on his publicly stated CV, he claims to be a visiting professor at universities, including the University of Glasgow, as well as his Cambridge position. And those universities are now saying categorically that's not the case. And what has happened today was that Cambridge University and his college that he's attached to, Jesus College, both said that they were investigating it. And I think at that point, although he's saying, which I'm sure is true about the pressure on his mental health and his family, I think he really had no option but to step down.
Yes, and he's issued a statement. While criticism is an inevitable part of academic life, what I've experienced has gone far beyond scholarly disagreement. The relentless accusations, speculation and public commentary have taken a profound toll on me and on those I love. And it's a, you know, it's a longer statement.
I mean, there's no doubt he was a tall poppy, and there are elements of our society who are quite gleeful at cutting him down.
Golly. Let's just take a look at a story that's on the front page of The Guardian, with the picture story on the front of the Daily Star. It's Kent Eastwood, the land with no rain. While The Guardian tells us that the NHS is being told to prepare for an annual heatwave crisis, with yet more warm weather coming next week. I know there's been a bit of rain, but nonetheless, I mean, there's the Guardian article. We'll see the Star in a minute. It's the brown fields, isn't it, in parts of the UK?
It's been quite exceptional, I think, and you know, I really feel for our farmers. It must be, you know, incredibly stressful time. But this is something that I think is going to become more and more frequent, and we're facing all kinds of stresses. I mean, we see it in our gardens and our fields. We're also having you know, more extreme weather events. Our vessels at sea have to cope with you know, more extreme conditions. Things are changing, and we have to keep up with it. I mean, I think, you know, the people recognising that, you know, air conditioning now is required, and for what we're going to also have to face in the future. They're talking about very different.
Yeah, a monster or a super El Nino, which is the weather system that drives a lot of the weather we got, and they're talking about a colossally impactful one. But Adam,
I mean, this picture of Kent with the brown grass on the front of the Daily Star. You know, the point is that the cattle can't eat the grass anymore because there isn't enough nutrition, so they're having to use winter feed. Although it's interesting they've gone for the comparison with spaghetti westerns, because as fans of film know, spaghetti westerns weren't made either in Italy or in America. They were actually made in Spain. So, you know, perhaps they were truer about the situations in Europe than we thought.
Yeah, might expect it in Southern Europe, but not perhaps in the northern climes in which we inhabit. Lots more still to come. Words coming back to haunt the new Foreign Secretary in Washington. Taking a look at that next.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on.
They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
Oof. OK, nothing to see here. Drama over. Full stop. Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
Because she's the first female chancellor.
I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. James Matthews from Sky News. Can I ask, why was Ghislaine Maxwell invited to your daughter Chelsea Clinton's wedding in 2010? Maria, did you offer to President Trump your Nobel Peace Prize?
I presented the President of the United States the medal.
Free, wherever you get your news.
Bang, bang. You can hear it hitting the windows.
Our houses are okay.
As bad as all of this is, it could have been much worse. Today, this land they call sacred is at the heart of America's electric car revolution.
To me, it's a sacred ground.
David Cameron says that you should vote through funding for Ukraine. What do you say to that?
I really don't care what David Cameron has to say.
Did you stay at the apartment of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions about him.
I've covered some of the biggest stories in the world. Mr. Patel, did you endanger public safety when you said the killer was in custody? Mr. Hexton, does your past behaviour make you unfit to serve?
Escort coming out!
San Quentin houses America's largest death row. They rarely allow cameras onto the condemned block. James Matthews, Sky News.
It's one step closer to getting out, to getting off death row.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding. What do you call him, sir? James Matthews from Sky News, Mr. Mamdani.
I have to be honest, when you said you were from Sky News, I just got very excited. Could you repeat the question one more time?
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Hear that whistle and that crunch. We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
Now, Ed Miliband said the UK and the United States will continue to stand together with Ukraine on his first visit to Washington as Foreign Secretary. Mr Miliband has come in for some criticism from the Trump administration in recent weeks. And as our correspondent James Matthews reminded him earlier, the Foreign Secretary has been less than courteous about the president in the past.
Mr Miliband, do you still think the president is an idiot, a racist and a misogynist? Sir, do you still hold a dim view of the president?
We're looking forward to our meeting.
Yes, and after that meeting with Mr Rubio, the Foreign Secretary was pressed on his previous comments about President Trump.
The US is our closest ally. They're our closest ally when it comes to the importance of our economic partnership, our defence partnership, our security partnership, our intelligence partnership. That partnership endures. And it endures through successive administrations, and it will endure in the future, as Secretary Rubio and I discussed in our relationship today.
We know, though, that President Trump prizes personal relationships, so you don't foresee it ever being a problem?
I don't.
Yes, I don't. And then Mr Rubio posted pictures of himself with Mr Miliband on X and wrote, "In my meeting with the UK Foreign Secretary, we discussed the need for Europe to take a greater role in its own security." AKA, you're on your own, effectively, but then also reaffirmed our shared commitment to open transit in the Strait of Hormuz and ensuring Iran never obtains a nuclear weapon. So that was the word from the Americans on this meeting.
Yes, I mean, we've been here before, haven't we, with David Lammy and all sorts of other people that have said embarrassing things about the president. I think Washington does sort of rise above it on these issues. Where the damage has been done, I think, was with the basing row that happened under Keir Starmer. I mean, I'm in Washington a lot, and I think that really did have a lasting impact. So it's whether you can reset the relationship with that. But I think a lot of people in the US administration, senators and others who, you know, are important with regard to things like support for Ukraine, were really shaken with what was an unnecessary and slightly confected row that we didn't need to have. I think that has caused the real damage. It's not, you know, clumsy remarks that previous foreign and current foreign secretaries have made about the president.
Well, including J.D. Vance back in the day, the US Vice President. But anyway,
although it should be noted that in that round, I agree with you entirely. According to the report of it in The Spectator by Tim Shipman, who was the minister arguing that we had to limit the use of bases, none other than Ed Miliband, the man who was there. I have to say those pictures from the State Department always rather amuse me because I've been there. And the State Department is a sort of 60s concrete building. And so that's entirely fake set. I mean, literally, they come upstairs to walk through those doors and it's a flat made to look like the sort of sub-White House 19th century building, and it's just all entirely fake, entirely for this, the grip and grin, as they call it in America.
Great flags, as you can see. Adam, Penny, stay there. Lots more still to come. Let's take a look right now at the weather.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
So much drier over the next couple of days and cooler, but northern and western parts look like turning wetter into the weekend. Southern parts, though, will have a cooler and fresher start than recently tomorrow. It'll be dry for most, but it will be fairly cloudy for many, with a few showers possible. The morning looks mainly dry, though, sunny spells, further showers in places, mostly in the north and the west. Expect a few near North Sea coasts too. It'll be breezy and cooler than recently, with temperatures a little below average generally. Showers will become increasingly confined to the northwest during the afternoon, leaving most places dry with sunny spells into the evening.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city, where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
Tonight on The Wrap, I'm sorry, the FIFA boss emerges from a day of crisis talks, cap in hand. Gianni Infantino issues an apology for his scheme to try to sell off the World Cup. He promises change, but will it be enough to save his job? Kemi Badenoch accused of an outrageous lack of judgment for appointing convicted neo-Nazi Joshua Bonehill-Paine as an advisor on radicalisation. And there's fury from campaigners after it's announced that the Met police officer who shot and killed Chris Cabba in South London will not face disciplinary proceedings. Well, we discuss today's biggest stories with the former Defence Secretary, Dame Penny Mordaunt, and the political commentator, Adam Boulton. Plus a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers in half an hour. Well, hello, a good evening to you. Penny and Adam, welcome as well. And we bring you breaking news because in the past hour, the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, has issued an apology over his botched attempt to sell off a stake in the World Cup to private investors. Let's get the latest then. Our sports correspondent, Rob Harris, has been following this closely. A really long day of those meetings in Rabat in Morocco, Rob. Is Gianni Infantino off the hook, or has he just declared himself off the hook in this long note?
Well, this is a defiant note from Gianni Infantino, trying to stay on as FIFA president following hours of emergency talks after summoning senior staff to the FIFA offices in Rabat. And we finally got this letter sent by Gianni Infantino and his General Secretary, Matthias Grafström, to members of the FIFA Council and his vice presidents. And in it, you get the apology for the secrecy over the attempts to sell shares in the World Cup. You get defiance from Gianni Infantino, but you also get a threat to critics to shut up or face action. So if we just go through what some of the letter is saying, it says that the Secretary-General, Matthias Grafström, and the Management Board in attendance reaffirm their full support for Infantino as the only official elected by the member associations. That says the management in attendance. What about those who didn't go to the meeting? Now, we can take a deep look into some of the words of it. Now, they do say, we acknowledge mistakes were made in the process of the proposed establishment of FIFA Forward Enterprise. It was certainly not the intention for the FIFA Council and FIFA member associations to feel excluded from the process and how it's been handled differently. And we acknowledge that errors were also made after the proposal was leaked to media. We sincerely apologise for these errors and commit to them not happening again. With the project withdrawn, FIFA will no longer tolerate attacks on its integrity, good governance and due process, and will take all necessary measures to protect and safeguard its name and reputation. Well, how will that go down with the critics, particularly at UEFA, European football's governing body, who'd been mounting in the last week an attempt to oust him from power? This show of unity there from Gianni Infantino tonight with Matthias Grafström, his Secretary-General, who just yesterday, Mr Grafström, wrote a letter to his own staff that I obtained, talking about it being a sad and reproachable series of events which are difficult to comprehend and accept. This attempt to sell off shares in the World Cup without consulting widely, announcing the plans only after they were leaked, having been negotiated in secret with Joshua Kushner, the brother of Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, raised all sorts of questions about the leadership. Gianni Infantino's own senior advisor, Carlos Cordero, announced to me on Friday he was quitting because he thought it was such a bad deal in the way he'd been kept out of the loop. We heard from Kevin Lamore, FIFA's chief operating officer as well, who dared, effectively, Infantino to sack him in a statement last week. So angry was he with these plans. So we'll wait to see if this does stave off the critics. And what it means, there's no mention of the election coming up in this letter next year in March, when Gianni Infantino is seeking another 4-year term. But certainly this letter tonight to the members of the FIFA Council is Gianni Infantino's attempt to say, we're moving on, it's business as usual.
Moving on or clinging on, and talking about that election, Rob, you have discovered that actually FIFA was sending out pre-endorsed letters to football associations backing Gianni Infantino, so yet more criticism being laid at the door of FIFA.
this is raising questions about whether the FIFA machinery was being used to help Gianni Infantino's re-election bid. During the World Cup, a report emerged that more than 200 of the 211 FAs around the world had already endorsed Gianni Infantino's re-election. Sky News has discovered that FIFA sent out scripted letters to football associations offering wording to endorse Gianni Infantino for re-election, and there was text praising his achievements at FIFA, and it was written, we understand, by the FIFA staff ahead of the World Cup, and it even had the names and Football Federation included on the letter to send back. Now, FIFA's not commented on it, and while there's no part of the FIFA regulations that specifically say you can't use internal resources to help an incumbent's re-election, well, the rules do talk about acting in a fair and reputable manner, and a former FIFA governance chief, Miguel Majoro, told me that it could amount to a violation of the principles of the separation of powers and, indeed, the fact that officials cannot be involved in such a thing because it could be an abuse of position by the president. No word from FIFA, but it shows how FIFA's machinery was being mobilised before the World Cup, Sky News learnt, to back Gianni Infantino's re-election. Now we wait to see whether UEFA, as they've indicated, will put up a rival in the election next year, and just what the reaction to this whole attempts to fight on will be from Gianni Infantino.
Yes, how they unseat him is kind of next steps, isn't it? Rob, fascinating stuff. Thank you very much indeed, and, you know, keep up the good work. Rob getting a lot of lines on this story. We saw pictures there of Gianni Infantino and Matthias Grafström, the FIFA president and the FIFA secretary-general, at a women's football game in Morocco after this long meeting in Rabat. But that threat, effectively, in this letter that they've jointly issued, saying that FIFA will no longer tolerate any attacks on its integrity, it has to be aimed at people like UEFA. You know, how would you feel if you UEFA being told literally, you know, time to shut up, effectively?
Yeah, I mean, there's no humility in it. And, I mean, it looks like it's been drafted by lawyers, you know, saying we haven't broken any of the rules, and if you continue to criticise us, you're going to come a cropper. But, you know, it misses the point, which is that football really matters to people, and they want to be able to trust the guy that's the, you know, the custodian of something that's important to many people in many nations. And I don't think that the letter or some of the other stuff that's come out today is gonna help his case. So I don't think he's off his sticky wicket, if I can mix my sporting metaphors.
Yes, because the suggestion was that UEFA might even try to boycott FIFA-organised events and tournaments, you know, as a way of showing displeasure or unseating Gianni Infantino. So, you know, how will football associations react, I suppose, is the next step. But this is clearly an effort to dig in, isn't it, by
Yes,
him?
it is, although, you know, in other circumstances, I've seen beleaguered people before issue statements like this, and they don't necessarily last that much longer after they've done it. I mean, you know, so I think there is a pattern. But, I mean, what is fascinating at the moment is we are basically seeing a confrontation now between the people who make football, i.e. the Europeans and, you know, some of the investors in the Arab area and the rest of it, saying, look, this is our game and we want to keep the World Cup for the fans. And this counter-argument saying, actually, what Gianni Infantino has been very successful is promoting women's football, promoting football around the world, getting other countries involved. And he's basically saying to them, never mind about, you know, the French and the Italians and whatever. The future is you, and I can make you rich and, you know, keep me in the top job. So you've actually got this conflict about what is going to happen to world football. And, of course, the big difference is whether you continue with the World Cup as the idea that it's not about money, it's about the footballing nations coming together to compete, or whether you just say football is a business and we can have a load of Americans who, frankly, don't know one end of a soccer pitch from another, controlling the thing and filling their pockets with it and distorting the game with things like hydration breaks and half-time ceremonies and all sorts of nonsense. I mean, there's a real battle for the soul of football, and Infantino who comes from Europe is actually siding with the anti-Europe factions.
Well, just very quickly then, did he get too close to the sun and the star that is the Trump universe, do you think? Is that what we've been witnessing here?
I think it's, I mean, that's obviously provided another element to the story, but I think we would still be in the same situation if it was an entirely different set of individuals. I just think, you know, people have, they want to be able to trust the president, and as in of FIFA, and you know, his actions don't build that trust and confidence. So I think this story will run, and I suspect there'll be more on particularly how he may have abused resources.
Yeah, OK. Yes, Rob's story about these pre-endorsed letters makes fascinating reading. Lots more on our website and our app on all of that. Now, Kemi Badenoch today doubled down on her support for a convicted anti-Semite. The Conservative leader has appointed a former neo-Nazi as an advisor on radicalisation. Joshua Bonehill-Paine had been selected to contest a council election for the Tories, a decision which had prompted anger and concern in the Jewish community, the backlash of which led him today to withdraw his candidacy. Well, Mr Bonehill-Paine had been jailed in 2016 for the racially aggravated harassment of the former Labour MP Luciana Berger. Tonight, she has described his appointment as an insult. Nonetheless, Kemi Badenoch continuing to give him her backing, saying this evening: "While I'm sad that Joshua feels he won't be given the space to explain his position and represent his community, I'm glad he's going to work with me and the party on tackling radicalisation as part of our Culture and Integration Commission. If we're going to stop extremism and anti-Semitism, we're going to need help from those people who were part of the problem, but have now changed and are being part of the solution. Piling on them and trying to get them cancelled may be sport for other parties, but this is a different Conservative party." So, what did Mr Joshua Bonehill-Paine have to say on social media? He said, "I had thought that getting involved in my local council and working hard for my community was a good way to show how much I have changed and that I want to give something back. I realise now that the fight against anti-Semitism is something that I actually need to do more of. I need to show the Jewish community how much I regret my previous actions and how hard I'll work to fight to help destroy anti-Semitism and rebuild trust." And meanwhile, in a post on X, Luciana Berger said the decision to welcome this individual as an advisor to the leader of the opposition is no better than allowing him to stand as a council candidate. It is a privileged and influential national role. As a victim of the man's heinous crimes, this appointment is an insult. So, Kemi Badenoch, she defended his candidacy when speaking yesterday. Let's listen to her.
Yes, he is somebody who had been previously convicted, but he is someone who has shown contrition for his crimes, has been rehabilitated, and is spending every day working to solve the very problem which he knew he had caused previously. He's going up and down the country training people, and the Conservative Party believes in second chances. This is not just someone that we've picked up who's a convicted criminal. This is somebody who is actively working to help communities, especially Jewish communities.
So, Adam Penny, is Kemi Badenoch right to back him, even though he's withdrawn as a councillor, Adam?
Well, a lot of people may think it's the Christian thing to do, and certainly Claire Coutinho, the member of the Shadow Cabinet, has said exactly that she thinks that people are entitled to forgiveness. The problem, I think, comes where it looks selective, that, you know, you can forgive someone for doing pretty unpleasant things as a neo-Nazi and as an anti-Semite, and Luciana Berger making quite clear she's a victim. But, you know, you can't forgive Grant Shapps for disagreeing on aspects of policy, and you know, you criticise Louise Hay for having a spent conviction for fraud over a phone before she became a politician. So I just think that in the culture which we're in, which we might regret, it is a cancel culture. And I think if people cross the line, and this guy clearly did, you have to accept that they should remain cancelled. And clearly, by bringing him into central office to advise that's not the case.
And the Tories the first to shout over accusations of anti-Semitism during Labour's Corbyn era, for example. But does Kemi Badenoch simply not believe in cancel culture? Does she genuinely believe in rehabilitation? Is this effectively a success story for the prisons if they've turned this man round?
Well, look, I mean, the culture of anti-Semitism that had plagued the Labour Party, and you know, during the time when poor Luciana was literally driven out of her own party, that was being tolerated under Corbyn. You know, he turned a blind eye to it, and there was a lot has been done by the Labour Party to try and address that situation. I think the case with this gentleman is quite different. He's somebody who hasn't just, you know, moved on from the appalling things that he's done. He's, I think, genuinely, you know, sorry for what he did, and he's spent quite a lot of his life since trying to address those issues and trying to contribute to educating people about, you know, how he became radicalised and trying to do something positive and good with his life. He certainly, you know, I think would have quite a bit to contribute to trying to get this situation in a better place and develop policy. But I think his statement was quite impressive today and did show humility and a recognition that, you know, to be a councillor, it's not just, you know, are you now a reformed character? How do you actually win trust and confidence for people in your community, including people from the Jewish community? Well, I think we've ended up in a good place at the end of today.
Well, all you are, according to Kemi Badenoch, which I'm sure she will rue, is somebody who fixes parking fines and bins. And that was the problem, wasn't it? When she was saying, this is not a national post for him, this is before he resigned his candidacy.
That was in answer to a particular question. And, you know, there's many, you know, times
but insulting to councillors everywhere, to be fair.
Well, I think you got to look at the context in which it was said. I mean, she's spoken many times about the importance of councillors and people, you know, holding the brief of social services and these things. It's important that you have trust and confidence, and, you know, ultimately, you know, you're putting yourself forward to the electorate.
But it doesn't look good to say, effectively, this person is not good enough to be an MP, but he is good enough to be a councillor. I mean, I'm sorry, I just think that. Look, that's what she was saying.
I think she was really talking about, you know, this is the process you go through to be on the candidates list to be an MP is a much more resource-intensive process. I mean, it has to be, you're dealing with matters of potentially national security and all sorts of other things. I don't think she was being dismissive about being a councillor.
But de facto, what she was saying was that.
Well, I think people will read it that way, but I don't think, having listened to the interview, and I heard her on the radio this morning, that's what she was saying.
Well, reaction from political parties everywhere, but also from those who work in this area. This is the reaction from the Anti-Semitism Policy Trust.
It's another story about anti-Semitism, and ultimately the Jewish community is fatigued. As you say, incident levels are at the highest levels ever. You've had anti-Semitic murders in the UK for the first time ever. So it's very worrying. So the more that political parties of any colour can do to ensure that anti-Semitism, there's complete zero tolerance for it, the better and more reassured the Jewish community will be.
Final thought? I mean, does it leave a stain? Is it, you know, a good thing this man can educate others within the Conservative Party now?
Well, look, he's got an opportunity to demonstrate that he's sincere in what he says. And I think, you know, I feel very... I mean, I was in Parliament when Luciana went through everything that she went through. I think it's right that people are listened to. I heard the Board of Deputies today say, you know, maybe in the future this guy will have rebuilt some trust and credibility coming back from the appalling things that he's done. So I think it's a case that, you know, everyone has been right to some degree on this today, and we've probably ended up in the best place possible.
No, I think you're right there, that it has ended up... he's not going to be a candidate, and frankly, my guess is, had he been announced as someone advising on anti-Semitism, no one would have batted an eyelid on that. So I think I can understand that Luciana Berger is saying that she's still upset about him being brought in at all. But, you know, I think this one, well, it's not on any of the front pages, so I think it is going to fade away.
Yeah. I know one of your favourite stories is, which we will come to shortly. But before that, after the break, we'll hear about the fury from campaigners after the police officer who fatally shot 24-year-old Chris Cabba is told he will not face disciplinary proceedings.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Now, the police watchdog has confirmed that the armed officer who shot and killed Chris Cabba will face no further action. Martin Blake was cleared of murder, but had been facing disciplinary proceedings. That will no longer happen after the government changed the regulations around police use of force. Well, let's hear more. Our home editor, Jason Farrell, has the background to this case.
So what happens in these cases, and it happened with Martin Blake, is if, let's take us back to September 2022, he opened fire at a vehicle that had been stopped by police officers. A single shot through the windscreen killed Chris Cabba. He had been trying to ram his way out from that hard stop, and Martin Blake's defence was that he had an honestly held belief that there was a threat to life, and that's why he opened fire. What happens in these instances is that the officer's removed from duty, from operational duties. They are referred to the watchdog, And what happened in Martin Blake's case is the watchdog said, actually, there should be a criminal trial. So he went on trial for murder. And I think that really, really upset a lot of firearms officers. It upset the commissioner. They felt that that was unjustified. He was cleared by a jury of murder. But then there's another process, there's the misconduct hearing. There's also an inquest, which is still outstanding. So that's 3 processes, and it can all take a very long time. And all that time, the officer is still not on operational duties. And in one case recently, that took 10 years. So that's 10 years of someone's career. And it's also 10 years for the family waiting for answers. So they're trying to speed it up by making the burden of proof the same for criminal trials as it is for misconduct hearings. The difficulty with that is that actually, by lowering the burden of proof for a misconduct hearing, you take away the question around reasonableness of the action and whether it was reasonable for Martin Blake to open fire. So not just his honestly held belief, but was it a reasonable course of action? And judges in the past have said, we should be looking at that in misconduct hearings because that's how the police will learn from its mistakes. But the Home Office has countered that and said, actually, no, in very, very high intense situations, which police officers are in, actually, they do sometimes make genuine mistakes, but they might not be mistakes that the officer sees in that moment. And I think this is a really difficult question to answer because nobody wants these things to drag on. And if you have successive processes, it can take years. And I think also the police feel that actually honestly held belief should be enough. If they honestly believe there was a threat to life, then that's how they can do their job. Otherwise, they feel that if someone else tells them that their honest belief was inaccurate, then how are they ever able to know how to do their job? So that has been the argument and the nuanced debate around this. And it's come down in the favour of the police, and Martin Blake can now, if he wants to, go back to operational duties.
Well, lots of reaction to the story. Policing figures have welcomed the decision, but campaigners say they are appalled.
I would argue that we have a system that has not really succeeded in meaningful accountability. And the result of that is a culture of police impunity where they can do whatever they want to do. And we have hundreds, thousands of families who've been impacted by this type of violence and who have been fighting, campaigning for justice for 10 years, 20 years, some 30 years. It's clear, as there's never been a successful murder prosecution, there's very rarely even unlawful killing verdicts at inquests, that this country is unwilling to really hold police accountable when they use lethal force and when they take people's lives.
It is unacceptable that an officer who goes out to face danger on behalf of the public has his life put on hold for that period of time, as well as the extraordinary pressure and stress that puts on his family. It's equally unfair for a family that's lost a loved one, such as the Cabot family, to have to wait that long for the conclusion of a case. The professionalism of our firearms officers is extraordinary. We're running 4,000 firearms operations a year in London to protect communities. They do it with such care and professionalism. We're only firing shots on 1 or 2 occasions.
The Met Commissioner there. So this decision taken by the Independent Office for Police Conduct. Penny, where do you stand?
Well, I agree with the head of the Met. I mean, the system doesn't serve either party. And I mean, what is not often said in these circumstances is we often think of police officers, firearms officers in particular, and the harm that they put themselves in to protect us. But also, you know, it's also what we ask them to do. I mean, taking someone's life to defend the public is, you know, it's a difficult thing for people to do. And I think if we're going to ask people to step up and do that, then we owe it to them that they're dealt with fairly, and in situations like this, that it's also dealt with swiftly. So I think that the right conclusion has been reached, but it has taken far too long. And as I say, you know, this took 4 years, I think. In many other cases, it's much longer.
I just think, you know, we should all be grateful that it's mercifully rare that this happens. We don't have routinely armed police, and we don't have these sort of shooting incidents taking place, unlike some other countries I won't mention.
I know, and the professionalism of you know, our armed police officers is immense. I mean, they do.
I mean, it's right that we should have a fuss when this happens.
Yes.
Whereas in some countries you wouldn't have a fuss.
You're looking at about America, aren't you? Probably with,
in particular.
with
Clearly
many
not
of the
true that they're, not held to account. Clearly they are for their actions.
Yeah. Yes, and a decision was made back in January to pause any proceedings involving Sergeant Martin Blake until a law change relating to the use of force in misconduct cases was introduced and its impact was clear. So they did that, and then I suppose he benefits from it. So there we are. So, as you say, a fuss is made, but it is rare. Right, should we take a look at the front pages then of tomorrow's newspapers, discuss them more with Penny and Adam in a moment. There's the Metro. It leads on calls to scrap what are called indefinite prison sentences after the government confirmed its plans for the early release of thousands of inmates. The Daily Express also covering early release, with former Home Secretary Dame Priti Patel describing the plans as a betrayal of the family of PC Andrew Harper, two of whose killers would be eligible. Meanwhile, Andy Burnham has written an article for tomorrow's Mirror announcing that 150 new mental health centres will open across the country. The Financial Times reports on efforts by Chinese authorities to get the country's economy back on track by recouping billions in unpaid taxes. According to The Guardian, a prominent Cambridge professor has resigned amid allegations of plagiarism and embellishment. The Telegraph reports on that resignation, which comes after the paper revealed he falsely claimed to have published a book. The Times leads on that story too, with the decision coming as the university launches its own inquiry. And the Daily Mail also leading on that. Plagiarism professor resigns, they say, as the university investigates. There is the Eye leading with school pupils, or schools rather, getting new pupil attendance targets in a bid to crack down on what the paper calls stay-at-home Fridays. And on the front of the Daily Star, Kent, they say, looking like something out of a Western movie as cattle are driven across land afflicted by the current drought. So let's get the thoughts then of Adam and Penny. And Adam, this Cambridgeshire plagiarism professor, accusations of which broke in a newspaper. It's spiralled, certainly, hasn't it? And now, as we see, leading a number of newspapers. Remind us of the story.
Well, it's a sad story. Basically, this academic, Jason Arday, had a very unusual background. He was not the usual sort of person you'd expect to be a Cambridge professor, and, to a certain extent was a poster child. But there have been people who have criticised his qualifications, his record, and charges initially of plagiarism in the thesis he wrote for his PhD, broadened out to people looking at claims that he'd made in interviews because he was a media figure, but also he's got a autobiography coming out, and frankly, it looks as if some of those claims were inflated or made up about his record. And today there was the particular problem that Cambridge and his Cambridge College both said they were investigating claims about whether he had the academic qualifications which he said he had, and it seems that some of them he doesn't.
Yes, and that announcement of the investigation came, the Times reminds us,
this afternoon.
After the Times submitted fresh evidence to the university suggesting that large parts of his research were fabricated and contained impossible evidence. Cambridge said there are a number of ongoing complaints about his academic research under investigation, and the paper also reminding us that he was the youngest black professor in the history of the university, so no wonder his high profile. Other papers leading on it as well. Cambridge professor quits after false claims is how the Daily Telegraph is covering this story. Resignation follows Telegraph revelations that Arday's books had not been published, which is another story. And then the Daily Mail, we can see there too, scandal, the left dismissed as racism, and now he resigns. I mean, it's got its own controversy. He said he's, in a long statement published by the Good Law Project, which had, I think, had a petition put together to support him, talked about his unbelievable amount of criticism he's received and the pressure that has put on him?
Well, I mean, it does appear that you know, some of these claims that he has made have been false, and you know, he has to be accountable for that. I think, you know, the story's got other angles to it. You know, people have tried to shut down this criticism, but you know, the university itself now is investigating this, and I'm sure that you know, the truth will out. As Adam says, it's very sad, but you know, it's you know, the integrity of the university is important. I
mean, he was a media figure. I mean, for example, he was one of the guest editors on the Today programme over the Christmas period. So he.
And you appeared on a show with him?
I did. I appeared on a programme with him reviewing the year, where, frankly, he seemed a bit of a fish out of water. You know, this sort of chat about what's in the news, not really his style. I don't think, but people wanted to see him there because he was, you know, such a phenomenon.
Well, I see the Daily Mail in its final paragraph, which is cut off, but I'm presuming it's the story that you related to. But after the Daily Mail revealed a string of universities disputed, you know, the claims, as you said, that he had positions with them. So it looks like each paper is claiming, you know, its own scalp. And it just, if you stick your head above the parapet, as you would know only too well, you get got, don't you? That's the point,
well,
really.
You know, if it is the case that he has misled his employer, his students, his colleagues over his qualifications, you know, I mean, that's a serious thing.
Yeah, I mean, it should be said the whole story started actually with a trade publication, academic trade publication, the Times Higher Education Supplement, which had hints from academics that his PhD research wasn't all it was cracked up to be. And the journalist doing that was actually visited by the police and accused of racial harassment, although the police subsequently dropped the case. But it should also be said that a couple of the academics who started the charges against him have pretty unsavoury views on race and eugenicism. So, you know, there is an element of him being targeted here, even although, as you say, he's probably, you know, hasn't helped himself.
Well, if he's misled people over his qualifications and he's you know, he's a public figure. If he's not told the truth about that, then you know.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is he may have been subjected to scrutiny that because of his race and his prominence, which others might have escaped, and you know, sure, he's not the only professor who has a slightly questionable PhD in his background.
More to be told on this, no doubt by him as well, by the sound of it, Adam. Both of you stay there, lots more still to come. More of the news and more of the papers still to come.
jubilation in the streets, while some emotional. This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Well, welcome back. We are taking a look through tomorrow's newspapers with Penny and with Adam. Penny, if we go to the Daily Telegraph, national debt rises above £3 trillion. And they say that Labour is borrowing £4,000 per second. And this is interesting because, A, it costs us all money, and B, it causes governments to be hamstrung about what they could do.
Yes, I mean, the problem is, Burnham is running at the job. He's made lots of announcements, but they're all increasing spending. And I think the public are way ahead of the government on this. They understand the fundamental things that need to be right in the country. They know they need to reduce the cost of energy. They know they need to do more to defend us and help our industrial base. And they also need to know, they understand you've got to control spending. People understand, particularly the welfare bill is out of control. But there's no indication that Labour is understanding this at all, or is equipped and has a backbench that are up for doing the tough stuff. So, I mean, this is we're getting into very dangerous territory now. This is, unprecedented what we're borrowing at the moment.
Adam, I mean, the story today, was it in the Times? I can't remember, about a slight, fixing the fiscal rules so you can still use it to invest, basically, to build, for example, council housing. So expenditure is still what the Labour government wants to do. Well,
yes, although the argument on that was that if you're investing in things that have a value, such as council houses or shares in renationalising businesses, that's different from simply borrowing to pay going concerns. I mean, that's the argument which Jim and Neil has made. Although, the problem with mounting debt is you end up tracing your tail, and in the end, the real danger is effectively you end up borrowing to pay the interest on what you've already borrowed, which certainly in a household budget is completely disastrous. And has to be said, it's not just this country, but France, America even. If you look at the classic predictions of where we're heading, we're all living above our means, and we have been for a long time. And at some point, people fear there may be a bust.
OK. Who'll do a deal with who? Looks like nobody. Double pay spread in the Times on politics. Badenoch rejects a coalition with woke reform. Interesting phraseology. And then in the Eye, Restore Reform Pact is unlikely as Farage simply can't be trusted. Presumably that's quoting Rupert Lowe. Anyway, Penny, deal or no deal?
Well, I mean, Kemi Badenoch's been saying this for some time. She's not up for doing a deal with reform, and her stock is rising. She's the most popular leader. Her trajectory has been, pretty substantial, and slowly but surely, the Conservatives are rising in the polls. And similarly, we've seen reform having the reverse trajectory. So, she wasn't saying it when their fortunes were much higher than hers. She's quite right to stick to her guns and not say it now that she'd do a deal with them. I think they are very different entities.
It's interesting, she's actually said this on the podcast Political Currency, which is done by Ed Balls and George Osborne. And one of the points she makes is that it's a non-starter because she couldn't bring the Tory party to realign with reform when it's got former Tories in it like Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman, which is also the thing cited by Restore Britain for not joining in with reform. So these defectors have turned out to be pretty toxic.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, but just very quickly, let's take a look at the Eye, which is this a piece of SpaceX rocket which is thought to have crashed into the moon. Scientists expected that the fragment, have we got the story, which had been floating in space since last year, was going to smash into the moon at high speed earlier today, although the impact had not yet been confirmed. So they're definitely looking to do that, which takes us on to pictures of the sun, actually. And these are extraordinary new pictures of the surface of the sun, images that show the sun's surface in unprecedented detail, exposing what they're calling swirling plasma patterns never before observed at such high resolution. This was all captured by the National Science Foundation's telescope in Hawaii. Images published by the journal Nature after scientists discovered they'd recorded the sun's outer layer in extraordinary detail. Researchers also identified intricate wave-like structures, which are known as Kelvin-Helmholtz instabilities, formed as streams of magnetised plasma move past each other at different speeds. I mean, it's unbelievable what you can see these days, isn't it? It really is.
They're remarkable pictures. I'll give my usual health warning as we're coming up to a solar eclipse. Don't look at the sun, folks. Don't look directly at the sun. It's very bad for you.
It is amazing pictures of a celestial body. But I have to say it reminded me of a crunchy bar.
Bring everything down to earth. It's the solar eclipse. Full coverage on Sky News next Wednesday of the solar eclipse. Best seen in the southwest if you're holidaying there, I read, and fingers crossed for the weather. Penny Mordaunt, Adam Boulton, real privilege to see you both. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. We have the sport next. We will have the latest on Newcastle captain as he moves closer to joining Arsenal. Stay tuned for that.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on.
They've not had a good week. I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
Oof. OK, nothing to see here. Drama over.
Full stop.
Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
Because she's the first female chancellor. I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. James Matthews from Sky News. Can I ask, why was Ghislaine Maxwell invited to your daughter Chelsea Clinton's wedding in 2010? Maria, did you offer to President Trump your Nobel Peace Prize?
I presented the President of the United States the medal.
Free, wherever you get your news.
Bang, bang. You can hear it hitting the windows.
Our houses are okay.
As bad as all of this is, it could have been much worse. Today, this land they call sacred is at the heart of America's electric car revolution.
To me, it's a sacred ground.
David Cameron says that you should vote through funding for Ukraine. What do you say to that?
I really don't care what David Cameron has to say.
Did you stay at the apartment of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions about him.
I've covered some of the biggest stories in the world. Mr. Patel, did you endanger public safety when you said the killer was in custody? Mr. Hexter, does your past behaviour make you unfit to serve?
Escort coming out!
San Quentin houses America's largest death row. They rarely allow cameras onto the condemned block. James Matthews, Sky News.
It's one step closer to getting out, to getting off death row.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding. What do you call him, sir? James Matthews from Sky News, Mr. Mamdani.
I have to be honest, when you said you were from Sky News, I just got very excited. Could you repeat the question one more time?
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
hear that whistle and that crunch. We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
Well, time for the sport now. Here's Jessica.
Just one big cut, please do it. Camera sync, thank you.
An interesting weekend ahead for Dimitar Berbatov. Manchester United reportedly interested.
Nobody's knowing what's going to happen in the future.
Over my dead body, you won't leave Spurs.
You grow impatient. Am I going to miss my moment?
Dimitar's our next target for you, Mr. Levy.
Well, we've made a better one for you.
Tottenham have reported them to the Premier League for tapping up Dimitar Berbatov.
I didn't feel that we'd done anything that was untoward, really.
Exhausting process. Mentally, it's not good for your mind.
The time is ticking on the final day of this transfer window. Is Dimitar Berbatov going to Manchester United?
Sir Alex is waiting for us. I'm starstruck. Then I find out that City are coming in with the offer.
The noisy neighbours would have been absolutely the noisiest ever.
And I'm like, no, just one club here, we go for United.
Daniel, I think, didn't do himself any favours.
And I took the phone and like, Daniel, please, we had a deal, I'm staying here, bam.
A difficult move is finally only completed just 20 minutes before the deadline.
Oh my God, it's done.
Dimitar Berbatov comes with a hefty price tag, but also an excellent reputation and an impressive scoring record.
What can I say? From year to year, Tottenham got better and better, and I hope when I come here, next year we can play in Champions League.
Let's take you back to your time in Germany. How difficult was that decision to leave there?
I was so used with the city, with the fans, with the people, playing good football, great football. But part of life and development of an athlete is that at one point probably he's going to be thinking, is there more? So the moment I start to think about this was the moment then for me it was clear that at one point maybe I needed to make my next step.
My family was married to German people. I played in Bayern Munich, so I followed all these clubs, and I knew that Berbatov was the most talented striker there.
It was rumors here and there. My manager was trying to tell me from time to time. So the moment when my agent came in and said, now we have a very serious interest from Spurs, then I was like, all right. Martinho, the coach, is very good. He said, I know you, you can do well here.
When you are at Spurs and you want a player like Berbatov, is it possible for a club like Spurs to get Berbatov? And he knew that I knew him. I said, you will be a revelation here in this league.
I think over the phone it was maybe a short conversation, trying to tell me that I'm his guy for the number 9. He showed the desire that he wants to have me in Spurs.
If you had a conversation with Daniel Levy 1 hour before he spoke to me, he wouldn't have promised him the world. He needed to be convinced.
Meeting Martinho for the first time, that was also a very special moment for me. As I was walking through the corridors of White Hart Lane, going to his office to meet him, and I'm thinking to myself, what do I say now? How do I look? Do I look good? The coach, the boss?
Jessica, thank you. Well, let's see how our weather is shaping up.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
So it will be much drier over the next couple of days and cooler, but northern and western parts look like turning wetter into the weekend. Well, southern parts then will have a cooler and fresher start than recently tomorrow, and it will be dry for most, but it will be fairly cloudy for many of us with a few showers possible. The morning then looks mainly dry with sunny spells, but there'll be further showers in places, mostly in the north and west. Expect a few near North Sea coasts too. It'll be breezy and cooler than recently, with temperatures a little below average generally. Showers will become increasingly confined to the northwest during the afternoon, leaving most places dry with sunny spells into the evening. Northern and northwestern Scotland will see showers or longer spells of rain on Friday, locally heavy on the hills, but it will be fine elsewhere, bar the odd shower. Temperatures near average.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, that was the wrap. Thank you so much for watching. All the top stories coming up for you at midnight.